What kind of computer knowledge do you have or experience do you have? Much? There are software packages that some agents use that are specific, to the industry. Top Producer is a brand name that comes to mind, and I'm sure other companies have their own proprietary version of that. There's ACT and Contact, and I don't know that Wabansi has classes in those things. You might, under Workforce Development, might have like an ACT or Contact for email lists, that kind of thing. I end up having to know a little bit about Excel, but that's because I'm doing investment properties and spreadsheets and that kind of thing. And I'm not a real expert there, but I've had people build me spreadsheets, or I've been able to do some simple, minor things myself. Knowing your way around Word is good, but a lot of what you're going to do is in emails anyway, not necessarily in a Word document. Other things you'll learn on the fly, like just how to do simple things like DocuSign, which is all about contract documents inside a PDF. You're going to learn that, there. You're going to have a class for that. If you're not computer literate at all, then something like CIS 110 might be helpful here. It's a 3-semester-hour course, but you're going to learn Access and Excel and Word and PowerPoint, and I'm not sure how much many of those are actually going to mean. They're more general business presentation kind of skills and business use skills. So I'd kind of look, see what you think you're going to need to learn as you're in the business and what you're going to learn along the way.
Okay.
I mean, computer skills are really savvy, are really important, but a lot of them I think you can just sort of learn by doing. At least that's how it was for me. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's as big a deal that I know QuickBooks as anything else, because I get involved in accounting because of commercial property management. And some of that I've learned, taught myself, some of it I've been tutored on, and some of it I hand over to an accountant, and she just corrects. I put stuff in every year. At the end of every year, she corrects, make sure everything's in the right account.
Okay.
And it doesn't cost the partners very much, and I don't have to take a QuickBooks class. In fact, I was going to take a class here, and they don't teach QuickBooks in it. They use Peachtree instead of QuickBooks, or Sage, which is Peachtree, I guess. So, I'm not exactly sure about any particular computer course here that would be perfect or ideal, other than, like I said, some basic package. So just get in the business and see what works for you and see what you need, and ask brokers that stuff. See what they say, because every office may be a little different in what they want you to use. If they have a proprietary package they're going to make available to you.
Okay.
When I was in the business, if we were going to use presentation software, we had to buy it. So, I remember buying a package and then I hardly ever used it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. I was pretty good with Publisher and pretty good with graphics in Word. And so, I know my way around Word pretty well, so I can, sit down and do a market analysis and turn it into a presentation piece all at the same time. Now a lot of those tools are built into the MLS. In fact, there's 2 different CMA tools. So learning that is something you're going to do through MLS training. Okay, boys and girls, let's get back to our mission here. We're still in unit number 1, and we're on the Seller's Net worksheet. So hopefully everybody gave this a try, and we'll just sort of run through that. As I mentioned, up in the course shell, there is a copy from the Realtor Association of the Fox Valley, a copy of their net sheet, which has 2 side-by-side columns. And I tend to work on one straight vertical column. This particular net sheet that has some numbers in one column and some numbers in another is just a little bit awkward feeling to me, but it's relatively accounting-ish, similar to how things would be set up by an accountant. So again, use whatever form you're comfortable with, but yeah, I got that print. Did I?
Check the battery.
Okay, good. That's to make sure it was running.
Yeah.
So, so let's just take a look and go through this seller net sheet together. So they give us all this worksheet information, right? They give us the sale price, the sale date, all this kind of stuff, which is stuff you're normally going to have to work with on some basis. We're not getting into necessarily everything here, but this information would be the kind of thing you would need. Just because of prorations, you need to project a sale date. How much real estate tax is going to have to be paid. You need to project a sale date, all that sort of thing. All right, so looking at the case study. So under the seller network sheet, first thing you're going to have is basic property information, and yes, you can fill all this stuff out. This is not like a disclosure form where you don't want to touch it. This is all your work. You're going to create this thing and you're going to provide it to the seller. So this is something you would do, right? Add a listing, you would hand off, add a listing presentation. You're gonna work this up because the average seller is gonna wanna know what it's gonna cost them to sell their house and what they're gonna net. That's the reason for the term. What are they gonna net out of the sale? What are they gonna get out of the deal? So you put the property information, client name, date, and you might have this all, like I say, polished and, and in really nice presentation form when you are handing it off to them. So the first thing we have is a sales price. What are we using for a sales price?
215.
Yeah, $215,000. This is what our CMA says. This is what we're suggesting. I recommend when you look at this thing, maybe you be a little conservative. You're putting this in writing. If you think the thing's going to sell from 210 to 215, I wouldn't be using 215. I'd be using something, more like 210. And this is where you have two columns on the Fox Valley Association. You can have two different nets right next to each other. Here's the range, I think. So it is at 210, here's at 215, and you can kind of figure it out if the sale falls somewhere in the middle. Again, I tend to be a little conservative with my clients. If I tell them they're going to get 215 and then we get offers that they can only negotiate up to 212, they may never want to sell, right? So, I tend to be a little conservative on the presentation if it seems warranted at the time. All right, and then what do we have for the next line, which is what they're calling the seller's customary expenses. Anybody have a dollar amount for that one?
2022.50.
Yep, $2,022.50. So let's look where that comes from. That's down over on, kind of over down to the left, right? On, that's the total of everything that's in line 9 and all the sublines that are next to it. So we're going to jump right now to line 9 and look at the explanation of seller's closing expenses. So what do we have? Do we have transfer tax stamps? And how much are those? $322.50. Anybody not get that or need help figuring out how to get that? Tells us, right, it's the typical Illinois situation, 50 cents per 500 for the state, 25% for the county, so that's basically 75 cents per $500 or 0.15%. Title charges, we have to calculate that, or is that a given? Just a lump sum, I think. Normally title insurance would be calculated, but here they've just given us a lump sum in the problem of how much? $1,200. Does the seller have any inspections to pay for? No, so that line's blank. Customary contract around here, which we'll look at in the next class. The seller would typically only pay for like well and septic inspections. Otherwise, buyers tend to pay for their own inspections. That's customary practice. Could be done differently by the parties. Does the seller have an attorney's fee? $500. Again, that's a given. And know what, roughly what's normal in your area. And I have a couple clients who use an attorney that I know fairly well, and he's not as cheap. So I have to remind myself when I do something for them, it's a few $100s higher, as opposed to when somebody goes with whoever the cheapest attorney is, they can get a fee from. So again, those rates vary somewhat. Is the seller paying for a survey? We have nothing on that, right? So I have that line as being blank. Customarily by contract here, sellers pay for surveys on foreclosures and REO type properties. That's oftentimes not going to happen. The lenders won't pay for that. It's really a buyer finance related issue. How about a home warranty? Nope. So if we add up the $322.50, the $1,200, and the $500, we get the $2,022.50, right? The next line is the brokerage commission. So what do we know about the broker's fee?
5%.
Right. So we got two lines in the net sheet, right? For the buyer's broker and for the listing broker. So what are you going to have down here for the commission?
Listing brokers.
Right, because you only got the one. That's all we have. And I want to tell you, I think this is a strategic error. I never, ever, ever, ever put one commission down on the net sheet. You show a seller how much money on one line they're paying for the commission, and you're really overstating the obvious. They're paying you a lot of money to sell their house. Do you think that somebody who's selling a house for $215,000 doesn't think, oh my God, I wish I didn't have to pay $10,000 to sell my house? For some people, that's an enormous chunk of their income for that particular year. Or it's really a ton of money, maybe what drove some of you to the class. So how do you show what's true, the amount of commission they're going to pay, but not make it so, look so big? Yeah, split it. That's what you're going to do. It's also the perfect place here to disclose your compensation policy. So how much of that 5% is for the listing office and how much of it's going to the buyer's office, to that brokerage firm? Split it. It's the same number of 10,750 or whatever the number is here, but it's split in half, or if you don't do a 50-50 split, it's where you've got it. If you negotiate a bonus, if you are going to tell John, the seller, that, hey, one of the ways we can try and entice somebody is, maybe it's a 5% fee, but you should also pay a $1,000 bonus to the buyer's agent if we bring a buyer within the first 30 days or 60 days. Show that here and show it on the line that's not going to you, right? And you get a sense of how that's going to work. First bonus, that first time I ever negotiated the bonus, the seller proposed it, and I disclosed it right on my line. So we kept the bonus ourselves. I didn't think it was necessary, but he offered a bonus if we sold within a certain period of time, and he didn't say it had to go to the buyer's agent. So on the disclosure, I said, okay, well then we'll split the commission this way. And his response was kind of like, okay, whatever. I'm just saying I want it sold within, X days. We did, and my wife and I kept the bonus. Normally bonuses go to the buyer's agent. That's what it's there for, is to entice somebody. I'm not really all about compensating somebody else. But it was clear to the seller that that was the case, and they had no objection. It was disclosed, they saw it, they accepted it, it was all part of what was presented to them. So again, I would split that always. Here, the problem doesn't let you do that. All right. Is the seller paying any points of any kind for the buyer? No. Doesn't look like it. What do we have for a first mortgage payoff? Right, 150 grand. Now this is just given to us. You may actually have to calculate that in some cases. What do we have for other liens and deductions? We don't really have any liens here, do we? We have the repairs, so that would be on that line of 5 grand. Or actually, no, I've skipped one. Sorry, we got the estimated repairs of 5 grand. Then we do have other liens and deductions. Sorry, what is that? Yeah, that's the right. That's the real estate tax based on the proration. So you have to do a proration calculation in there to get the $1,100.50. So $2,400. Everybody okay with calculating that? So you got $2,400 for the year, right? Based on the last known tax bill or last year or whatever. We've got a closing on June 15. So we're going to draw our diagram here. So we've got January 1, we've got 12/31, and the deal's going to close in here somewhere, which is June 15th. Statutory month method, it says, right? So who owns the property? First part? Seller. Buyer owns it the second part. The cost needs to match the benefit. This is Illinois, so taxes are paid in advance or in arrears? Arrears. It's accrued, right? So it's because it's in arrears, we've got this period of time where the seller's living in the house, and what is he not paying? The property taxes. The bill's just accruing to be paid later in the year. So we know now that this means that it's this period of time, not this period of time. So we've got 5 months, right? And 15 days. So if we take the 2,400, is there any add to this, or is it just straight 2,400? Okay. I don't even have the math here. I'm just sort of winging this. So 2,400 divide it by 12, and for each full month, we're gonna get $200. How are we gonna get, well, whatever. And then, so that's gonna be 5 times 200. And really, we should just be able to figure out, you've got another half a month, right? Look, we have an extra 50 cents in here or some crazy thing?
I do.
But they do on my answer key. You have just straight $1,100. Yeah, they have $1,100.50. I have no idea why that's the case. Well, we'll shoot the publisher. So you're gonna end up with, you know, you can take that and divide it by, oh, maybe that's because they're gonna divide this 200 by 30 and come up with a rate that way. So if you take 200, I'll have my calculator out, but I can get it, 200 divided by 30, what does that per diem rate work out to?
666.
Yeah, that's what's gonna happen here maybe. So you get a rate of $6, maybe it's $6.67, 6.67 times 15, yeah. It's not 50 cents, it's in a nickel. So if you do it this way, you're gonna get for the 15 days, you're gonna get $100.05. This is 15 times 6.67. That's why it works out that way. So you're gonna end up with $1,100.05. Trust me, you know, at the state exam, it won't be off by a nickel. And in practice, at the closing, nobody's gonna call you on that 5-cent difference. It just doesn't happen that way. So that's the idea of the proration. And of course, we should also look at this and know that it's a debit to the seller and a credit to the buyer. Because it's money the seller has to pay at closing to the buyer. To the buyer, it's like a cash gift. Reduces his or her closing costs by $1,100. I mean, it reduces the amount of cash they have to bring as if, you know, it was a gift. Later, of course, when they sell the property, they'll be in arrears and they'll have to pay even more money probably. Hopefully everybody can calculate that. Possible, again, question at the state exam. So that was for the tax proration on line 8. So we only have one credit to the seller, which is the $215,000. Everything else is a debit. Everything else is being subtracted from their proceeds, from John's proceeds here. So it's $215 minus the $2,022.50 minus the $10,750 minus the $150 minus the $5,000 minus the $1,100 and a nickel, or $1,100 even. And what do you get for the net cash to the seller? Should be 46,000 and change, 120 something, depending upon which number you use. I always forget to correct this. I think I go through this every semester. So really, in theory, I guess it should be 46,127 and 45 cents. I have that right. Okay, so that's the idea of the net sheet, working through all of that. Again, this is something you need to get comfortable with doing, because as a listing agent, you'll do this for a seller. You following this okay?
Yeah, completely different number twice, the same one. 51,877.50. And one of these now deduction.
No, did you subtract out the 5,000?
I subtracted 2,022.50, 5,000, 150,000, another 5,000, 1,100.
Did you get the 10,750? All right, we have a commission of 10,750.
I just left them together at 5,000.
Well, but it's not 5,000 each, right? It's 10,750. So you have 5,000 for one and 57.50 for the other. It should be 215 minus 2,022.50 minus 10,750 is on line 3. Then minus 150, then minus 5,000, then minus $1,100.05 or you have my blessing to forget the nickel.
Yeah, you had any other commission.
Okay. Yeah, so I get 46, 127, 45, but if you got 46, 127, 50, which is what you would have gotten, I think, would be fine. Again, there's no math on your final exam here in this class, but this is the kind of thing you need to be able to do for the state exam and for practice. And there are seller net sheet tools in the MLS as well. I just set up and embedded an Excel spreadsheet inside of a Word document, so it would go in and add stuff for me, and the Word document was all about my presentation stuff. Okay, so question number 1, will the seller have enough money at the closing? Yes, right? I mean, the seller's gonna walk away with cash, so we don't, we're asking that, is it a short sale, is it a distress situation? The answer is no, right? We've got that covered. That's really all question number 1 is about. So will the seller bring enough money? No, right? Unless something else happens, the seller is good. What if the seller's repairs were $50,000 under additional scenarios?
Then they'd be short.
Well, they're 5 right now, so actually they would just have about 1,000 or so left, right? Because you already have 5. My answer key says what you say. It says they would throw them in the red, but the answer key is obviously wrong again. So they would just be, they'd have $1,127 or whatever it is. If you were in a case where, what if the first mortgage balance was $250,000, now you're talking about a short sale. And again, when do you want to find out that your seller is underwater? First possible moment. So if somebody calls you and wants to list the property, I think it's still appropriate to ask them, are you guys, do you guys, is it a short sale? Do you know? Keep in mind, people may not know. They don't really know where the market's at.
Would it be appropriate if somebody is in a situation where they would be upside down to suggest that maybe they wait a year to list their house?
If they can afford to, yes, possibly. You'll need to take all those circumstances into the situation, because into the analysis. Because what if they're in foreclosure and the foreclosure sale may be happening sooner rather than later? If the list pendants hasn't even been filed, then they're not even in default and haven't even been given notice yet. It could be more than a year before they even get to that point. And if it's an FHA loan with forbearance and things, it may have to take longer than that. So yeah, it could very well be the right course of action. Again, you have to look at the market, what's happening. Do I really think it's going to come back in a year? Is it just wishful thinking? Again, markets are kind of lumpy, so if you get that pop, somebody could go from underwater to being able to sell in a year. Reasonable assumption. But other markets might be in the exact same place a year from now. It's kind of hard to know. Some places in the country, looking at it on a national basis, are higher than the peak levels of '07. Some of the places in California, for example. Some other markets like Denver, Houston, some of the oil cities that haven't come down, with the price of oil in terms of real estate values, and whose property values did not boom in '06 and '07. Those places have values much higher than they did in '07. Is that a bubble? Is that just natural growth? No, I don't think anybody really knows at the moment. People are so emotional about all this stuff right now. So yeah, you'd have to look at all that to make a determination. Make a recommendation that you think is in their best interest. I actually like that as a thought because you're not thinking about, I really want to sell the place and get a commission now. You're thinking about it from standpoint as, well, if you waited, this might, you might be in a better situation. It's also reasonable to counsel somebody, take my situation, for example. I'm in DuPage County where our house prices have come back, and I would bet this year to next we're probably going to have a little bit more of an equity increase there than I would have if I lived out here, depending upon where out here I lived. I'm thinking Aurora, Sugar Grove, Yorkville, Plano. But it wouldn't be the case if I said if I was like, if it was downtown Geneva or something. So it kind of depends upon where somebody's gonna go. So if I were looking to give myself advice in those circumstances, I'd say, well, maybe I wanna stay where I'm at for another year because I'll come out better. On the other hand, it's kind of hard to time markets, so. just- All right, we have anything left from that one? I think that's pretty much case study number one. Let's jump into number two, disclosure fraud. We'll get as far as we can here in the next 15 to 20 minutes, and then that'll be it. So here we have a lot of stuff going on, right? Juan and Patricia have lived in their home for a long time. Patricia has dementia, so we have an issue of competency, or potentially could. They're retired, they have a lot of deferred maintenance on their property. General contractors come out, giving them a bunch of estimates, which we now have. Have a home inspection, which doesn't talk about the same things that the contractors came up with. A radon test. And we have Maureen, the real estate agent, with her CMA. Question number one, what evidence should Maureen, the real estate agent, look for in determining the age of the roof? Go ahead, Steve.
If your roof needs replaced, it's obvious, and if it's a new roof, it's obvious. And what I would say is if these people are telling her it's a brand new roof, they obviously lied to her, and I would walk away from the sale altogether.
Yeah, if you can't trust your client, it's maybe not something you want to get. Who knows what else is lurking.
But what if they're just old and time has gotten the best of them and?
These are the kids that are telling them it's brand new.
Yeah.
Brand new.
I know it's brand new, I can't.
And you've got somebody you can contact here, right? I mean, what do we have? Is one of the things we have here. We've got an estimate from somebody that there's $3,500 worth of repairs.
And a bill of sale, and
Yeah, something. So you can certainly call them and say, you know, can I have the number for the roof contractor? You can call them and go, what did you see when you know, what are you looking at here? Well, yeah, we think the roof is brand new, but it looks like there was ice damming last winter. You know, that would answer your question and give you some peace of mind. Oh, you know, we can make the roof work, but that thing really needs to be replaced. That's gonna confirm it in the other direction. Also, building permits, and you gotta have a permit to do a roof, are public record. So you could go to the village, if something is in a city, and say, when was the last time there was a roof permit pulled on this place? Hopefully they look that up for you, or you can find it. That's a lot of work, but that's a possibility. You can also ask another roofing contractor, if you know one, who's willing to do it for you, to just come out and give it an eyeball if you're not sure. I agree with Steve, it tends to be kind of obvious in most cases. You know, you just see the shingles look rough, and there'll be water problems that you should be able to see. If you get leaks inside of a house, you know, inside on, you know, roofs and places, the only way to cover that up is with oil-based paint. You can't just sort of paint over them because the latex paint dissolves the minerals, and the leaks just, you put 3 feet of paint on there, and it's just gonna keep telegraphing through with every coat, right? Because latex is water-based, and the minerals will dissolve in the water. That's why they're there, because they came down in the water in the first place. So somebody would have to go out of their way with oil-based paint to be trying to seal up or cover up, you know, all the leaks. And even there, I think, even if you paint over it with latex, usually there'll be a little bit different look to an oil-based primer underneath a latex sealing. Just my opinion. Anyway, so I think those are the things you'd look at. Getting another estimate, talking to that roofer, checking roof permits, and making your own opinion. I think it's reasonable. If the gut's telling you that something's not right here, it's a good question whether you want to list it, you know, take the listing or not. Should Maureen question the family about the history of the home? If you think your clients are maybe not all there, or one of your clients not all there, maybe you want to talk to other people. So, you know, you can get different stories from different people. Also, the kids could be confused. Maybe they, you know, Maybe they thought something was replaced, maybe they don't know. So I talked to anybody I could. If somebody tells me the roof's brand new and you're not sure, you know, ask them, hey, do you have the receipt? You know, the bill of sale, Steve mentioned, I think, you know, you can look at it. Well, we don't know, well, you know, if they can't prove it that way, maybe it's not. And I already mentioned the permit, you know, records possibly.
Now, could you go to the neighbors and ask what they remember?
Sure, if you want to. I mean, worst thing that happens is the neighbor shoots you and you're dead and then you don't have to worry about it. You know? No, it shouldn't be, I mean, you know, neighbor could say, I don't know, we just moved in, you know, why would I tell you? But it's a reasonable course of action to just say, hey, do you remember, you know, what, did they have any siding, roofing, obvious repairs done over the last year, whatever. Who knows, the neighbor might say, oh, sure, they used my cousin so-and-so to do the roof, or I recommended the roofer to them. Should be obvious to somebody who's around. If they're on vacation, they wouldn't know. I have a business associate who called me up one day and he goes, I got a problem. I said, what? He goes, somebody's putting a roof on my house. I said, what the heck kind of problem is that? He goes, I didn't call them. I lived in a bungalow in the city. I said, have you gone out to talk to these people? No. I said, you need to go out and find out right now where they're at on that roof and what the deal is. You know, in Chicago, bungalows are all just boom, 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 boom in many places. So the material people showed up and put the shingles between the houses one day. Next morning, roofing crew shows up and re-roofs the wrong house. They went to the left instead of to the right. And I said, okay, I said, you have an affirmative duty. I said, remember, I'm not a lawyer, but you have an affirmative duty to notify those people right now. He goes, okay, I'll call you back. So he goes out and tells the roofer, they call the office and roll. So they decided to just give him a half a roof. You know, they couldn't leave it as a mess. So he got a half a new roof, and then they went and re-roofed the right roof after that. So sometimes neighbors know more about roofs than you might imagine. All right, question number 3. What is the total repair cost? And must this be revealed? What do you think? You got an inspection that says one thing maybe, and you've got contractor estimates that say something else. And what do we know about our obligation to reveal or disclose things? Assuming this is an Illinois property, what do you got to do?
You wouldn't want to put a hard number on it though, would you?
The disclosure form doesn't require it.
Because then couldn't they come back to, like you said, this would cost 5, but it really costs 10, something like that?
That's a possibility. Now you could, you know, I don't think you put it on the disclosure form. You could put it on a separate sheet of paper that just makes the estimates available. We got these estimates, but we don't know, you know, we're not warrantying them or guaranteeing them, or, you know, we didn't use these people. You could do that. You could say to them, we've got estimates that say it's this amount, but you should get your own. But I don't think you put, you know, yes, it has a, you know, roof problem and it's worth exactly this amount of money. I remember one contentious negotiation where the seller insisted that a room or an area of the house could be recarpeted for $800, and the best prices I could get anywhere were double that. And I spent a lot of years in the construction business, and I finally just told my buyers, I said, the seller's just wrong. If you want to, you know, if he's not going to give you any more of a credit than that, you just got to decide to suck it up and deal with it. But I'm telling you, you're going to pay twice what they're offering you for a carpet credit. It was just, you know, holding up the deal for days. And finally the buyers just, I think, you know, accepted their $800 credit. And I think they did a little bit better than me, but only by a few dollars. The seller was just, I don't know where he was getting his numbers, I have no idea. So, yeah, I think you want to be careful not to take on liability as an agent, nor should your client, you know, but you can share that information. Certainly if it's defective, or you believe it, you know, it's defective and not working, it has to be disclosed. Question 4, can Maureen accept the listing? Is Mrs. Civil, whatever, is her condition a factor? We got a lot of things going on here. Got inspector saying one thing, contractor saying something else, adults saying one thing, kids saying something else. Got somebody who's maybe mentally competent, maybe who's not. How many deals like this do you want to do? Of course, it's a case study, so, and they made this up, so why not? But there's probably more and more people suffering from dementia in the world all the time. You know, we're pioneering lifespan as far as we know as people, so everybody's pushing the limits. So what do you think? Could you take the listing? Or if not, why not? If so, why? Go ahead, Steve.
Question I had on this part of it was Mrs. Swivel or Civil, not being competent. She has homestead rights to sign off when they sell.
Yeah.
Is her husband her power of attorney at that time?
I don't think it's automatic. I think that power of attorney has to be granted. I think it's a perfectly legitimate question and one you would want to know at that moment in time. Dementia comes in a lot of forms, right? Sometimes people today with early onset, or you know, you've got this, I'm okay in the morning, I'm not okay when my brain gets tired later on in the day, or other things that we're not quite sure yet what the triggers are. So somebody can be competent at one moment and not again, and so you really have to look at that and try and figure that out. For some people it progresses very quickly, and for some people it's very slow. So I think you just use your best judgment, but again, when in doubt, you don't want to be at the closing table and you can't convey, or you don't want to be negotiating a contract and you can't get a signature. So you'd have to ask. Again, when these kinds of things come up in practice, who are you going to talk to? You go to your managing broker. That's who you're going to talk to, try and sort out how do you want me to handle this.
What would the judgeable approach be to somebody like that, to the seller?
Well, if you think that one of them is possibly not all there, I think you have to talk to the other one of them. And I think you have to take them aside, you know, and just say, I'm a little concerned. When I first met with your wife, she was alert, understood what was happening, whatever, and she doesn't seem to remember meeting me, she doesn't seem to know what's happening, I'm a little concerned. Is there any, you know, are there any health issues I should be concerned about? Again, it's, you know, tact and, you know, courtesy, but I think you need to know. It's a material issue as relates to your brokerage services and the contract between you and them, much less the potential for a sales contract to another party. I think part of fair and honest dealing is you don't put a property on the market that you don't think you can convey, or that you're suspect whether you can convey because you don't even know if you have a valid listing agreement. I think you can't do that. Again, it's going to come down to how the brokerage is. I've not run across this one like this. I've heard stories, people talk to me about them, but I've not had one specifically like this. Anything else on that one?
Have a reader.
Yeah, we got that. Now, again, that would be an item for disclosure, right? I mean, if it's a problem, it just gets disclosed. That's pretty straightforward. Unless, of course, you do what ahead of time? Mitigate it, right? If you mitigate the radon, then it's over. A couple of years ago, I had sellers who were able to negotiate their way out of half the radon mitigation. Most of these sellers just go, oh God, I got to come up with $1,100 or $1,200, fine, because if not, you explain to them, you're going to have to disclose this to the next people. And I kind of walked my sellers through that, and they're like, well, that's fine, but we don't want to pay for something we're not going to get any benefit for. Okay, so that was how I went back to the buyers. Sellers are willing to make a contribution, but you're going to get all the benefit, they're not going to get any benefit, and they're wondering if you're willing to split the cost. And the buyers did that. I was really surprised. Almost 20 years, and I'd never seen that done before. You know, it's the seller's problem, right? I mean, that's how I've always seen it, but these sellers wanted to, you know, it was a big deal with them to keep that last $600, $500, whatever it was. The other thing just about the listing in general, again, just your general comfort with whether you know the truth. All right, number 5 will be the last one we'll do for the night. If Maureen accepts the listing and the civils fill out a seller disclosure form, it indicates there are no physical issues, is Maureen liable?
Well, yeah, didn't we talk about that the other day?
Yeah, right. I mean, if it's a problem, it has to be disclosed. And if your sellers know of a problem, or you know of a problem, and they don't disclose it, what do you have to do? You have to disclose it. In fact, it's your job then to get them to disclose it, to point out to them why it's so important to do that. If your sellers won't disclose it, you got to go back and talk to the broker about this, because it's, you know, it's one of those pass-through duties from Chapter 4. right? Because it's the seller's duty to disclose, and your duty is to only follow lawful instructions, and the only lawful instruction regarding a material relevant fact is to do what? To disclose it. Anything else is not lawful. So they can't prohibit you, you have to disclose it because they have to disclose it. And if they don't, you take the listing, or do you write on the listing, do you write on the disclosure yourself? Do you send a note to every buyer's agent who shows the house? That's a decision for your broker to make. Ideally, you just want a disclosure that discloses the problems. Now, in this case, I think it's a little bit confusing, and I think it's that way on purpose for the case. Because we have contractors who are saying one thing, and an inspector who's not bringing up other things. Now, why might a contractor give you a dollar value estimate when an inspector doesn't think it's a problem? Because the contractor is happy to have the work? Maybe. Maybe it's just a self-serving contractor who goes, yeah, I can, I think the roof could use this, that, or the other thing. And maybe your car doesn't really need brakes, but the mechanic needs, to eat next week. So he convinces you to get them now when they're at 80%, worn, not 95% worn, for example. And maybe it's one of these kinds of things. It's kind of a hard situation to be in. If you're on the fence, I think you've got to call those contractors and say, I just had a home inspection done, and the home inspector doesn't say anything about a problem with this or that. Why are you saying that this or that need to be replaced, need to have a problem? And if you got two opinions that are diametrically opposed, what's the only way to resolve that? Get a third opinion. And now you've got 2 to 1, and at least you've got something else. Maybe it gets worse. Maybe you get somebody who comes out in the middle. At least then you've got 3 opinions you can share with people. I think you have to be careful about what you want to claim as your area of expertise. Let the other people, be the experts that the potential buyers are going to be relying on. Anything else regarding that, number 5? All right, so when we come back on Thursday, we're a little behind, but that's okay. We'll finish up this, which won't take but a few minutes. Then the first thing we'll do is case study number 4 and get that done and out of the way. So make sure you've got that done for those of you who don't. And then I think after that we roll right into looking at the contract, right? Yeah. So we'll look at that. So if you haven't downloaded or read that or printed that, please do so. If you have no access to a printer or to be able to do that, I do have a handful of copies here. But it's really, I think it's a good idea that you've read that contract before Thursday night. Yes, we're going to go through it sort of paragraph by paragraph, but I want you to have at least seen it. And again, the one that's in the old textbook is 5.0. We're going to go through the current 6.0 contract. So it's best that you've downloaded that. So if you need a copy of that, come see me. I'd say I've got a few copies of that here with me. I think somewhere I can dig those out. Otherwise, download it or just read it online or whatever. We're going to go through it, so it's helpful if you have it in front of you on Thursday night as we're going through it to just make notes. You're not going to get tested out of the specific, sort of language of the contract, but this is what you're going to see in practice. And it's, you could get questions on the final exam here about certain kinds of things. It's a good place to take notes, even though you're not going to get tested on the chapter and verse of the contract itself. As part of that, we're going to talk a little bit about contract law, agency relationships, and stuff that go along with it. And if we have time, we might talk about listing presentation stuff. So if you have time between now and Thursday, if you haven't done it already, there's also some listing presentation stuff up in the course shell. Feel free to read that and take a look at that and just think about, that kind of stuff. But we might have our hands full just getting through the case study and the contract. Anything else anybody has? See you in a couple days. Or you're welcome to come up and talk to me in the meantime.
Can I have one, please?
You sure can. There you are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.